Hello, everyone. Nice small crowd today. I am Jade, and I help with the Bay Area, California chapter. Help on the national side. Help do some zines, patches, like this one right here, like these two. Amazing. Um, we're here for another discussion session right here on the Discord with everyone here. Agendas in the chat. We'll just go off bullet point the way down, and then we'll see where it takes us. All right. I didn't really have too much of an agenda right now. This is more general, broad understandings of our world. So nothing too like specific. Like not revolutionary, reactionary is kind of like this broad understanding of the different types of modes of thoughts, addressing needs as a general, right? Not really so Mao, but influenced by Mao, but more so that addressing needs really, that knowing and understanding what people need in their material condition and then addressing that. I had taken a little seminar with the PRP, like an onboarding thing, and they broke it down like this. It was a primary objective and then a secondary objective. Now, I don't really like the wording that they use, the verbiage, but I like they're using the term the general and the particular, right? Your primary objective is what you're set out to do, like very general. I want to help people. That's very general. That's your primary objective, helping people. Your secondary objectives are going to be the ones, or your particulars are going to be addressing how to make that first objective or that, that general a reality. In what ways particular do you go about, addressing your needs? And then, of course, the Vanguard, the politically detached intentional group, which has a relationship between the members inside and the masses at large, of which the Vanguard is to educate and guide revolution through. Start from the top to bottom. Revolutionary versus reactionary. Now, you read a lot of this in different types of works, in most any works, and then they're called different things. So revolutionaries may be considered communist or socialist. Reactionaries could be your liberal. I want to say anarchists, even though sometimes those are conflated. Separate them. All right, your liberal, your conservative is your reactionary. Your communist, your anarchist, your socialist is your revolutionary. And most of these stem from a root of understanding of how the world is to operate and how the world should be, or what ought to be about the world, right? A revolutionary mindset understands through this dialectical materialism, or at least at the forefront of the thought. The world is an ever-changing and self-emerging entity, of which things occur out of from which themselves, from their previous conditions, right? That's kind of the revolutionary thought. Things change. Things aren't just settled down and set in stone. Even stone itself erodes over millions and millions of years by water, whether it just be just the normal wind conditions. Even wind can carve air over billions and gajillions of years, right? Nothing is really set in stone. So a revolutionary understands this, our world as in forever changing, and this changing is a self-emerging process, or this addressing of contradictions at which make things exist, forever contradicting itself. Just forces imposing on entities, and the force like gravity. I love using this gravity example. It's very universal, right? Oh my god, I dropped it. I'll even do a bigger patch so you can see it. It dropped. So just the material examples of what we experience life to be, always constantly changing us. What's keeping me on this chair, my ass on this chair, my butt here? It's that gravity thing, that gravity phenomena, that relationship between dense objects or objects that which have mass, right? That's that relationship articulated. Reactionaries, however, right, see phenomena, understand what's coming at them, and then run with it, right? There's no forwardness, there's no articulation, there's no investigation, as we would say, about the understood phenomena coming at us, right? Because gravity as a phenomena, this drops down, and there are many ways to explain how this phenomena occurs in our material condition, right? So in the layman's terms, you would say the reactionary, the liberal, wouldn't think much of it. It just happens, and it happens, and they understand that it happens. So there's no more explanation beyond, there's no need to explain beyond further of why it happened. You see it, you happen, that's the phenomenon, that's gravity, let's move on, right? As opposed to, I guess, the we're revolutionary, just more the individual who is interested in that investigation will take upon this and be like, why do things fall down? Why, right? Or at least down in the direction of which we perceive. What makes this, right, phenomena occur and work? How, in which ways does this phenomena, in this case, this gravity, affect us? There's an investigation. There is a critical thinking about the phenomena at hand to explain something at which we do not see, to extract value from this understanding to give it meaning. And that meaning comes from that relationship articulated. Because right now, the patch by itself, in a certain vacuum, right? In the vacuum of space, there would be no gravity. There's no relationship between two dense objects or two objects of mass. And so just the vacuum, the patch by itself just is what you would consider a special type of analysis, like a type of vacuum analysis, where it's just observing and looking at the patch, not considering and understanding the existences and the forces which it imposes, and it itself being opposed on by the other conditions of the material condition. When we talk about revolutionary and reactionary, is these different types of modes of thoughts and these different types of understandings of the world. Reactionaries, of course, react. Revolutionaries, or I would say the more investigative individual, tries to seek that understanding of why things are the way they are, not just to be like, yeah, it is what it is. That's all about life. Reactionaries, I'll react. You throw something at me, I will react. That is that reaction, agitation, that pro-propaganda. And depending on the propaganda, of course, they will react under. So, of course, as we see now, U.S. propaganda, that, good old imperial red scared propaganda, baked within the schemes of the reactionaries. Of course, when presented with those phenomena, they will react accordingly to their ingested propaganda. So this propaganda falls into these two categories and is reflective of these two types of modes of thought: proletariat, bourgeois, or proletariat worker, individual who labors and sells their labor and relies on that sale of labor to procure that lovely, that great old paycheck, or the monies which allow you to live and sustain yourself, bourgeoisie. That thought, kind of reactionary, like bootstrap type mentality. It was like, I will just work hard and then I'm going to get all of my goodies all in the bag, and I'm going to live a happy life. If I work hard, that's all there is to it. I'm going to work hard. However, working hard in a system which does not provide you that benefit of working hard, your false meritocracy, you're going to run in circles. You're going to run yourself to death, laboring all this time, doing your hard work, and then all of a sudden you don't get anything, right? If people really worked hard, earned what they worked at, everyone would be millionaires. Everyone would be rich. Everyone would have this opulence because everyone works really hard. Right? Everyone works a lot. But of course, in this world, this false meritocracy, you don't have that. So in the proletariat thought, or in this proletariat, essence, this sale of labor, this understanding of how labor is appropriated, right? You understand that as a revolutionary, this proletariat, this thought, your bourgeois thought is that appropriation. So I like to also break this down into two other terms, right? Besides revolutionary, reactionary, proletariat, bourgeois. I like to say appreciation or appropriation. Right? So you have an appreciation, of course, that understanding, that investigation of, and then an appropriation, that manhandling of, that taking out which is not yours to then, utilize for whatever value produced or whatever aim or desire at which the individual appropriator is using that object as. So appreciation, appropriation, as I would say. Revolutionary, reactionary, proletariat, bourgeois. There's always two. But these two make up the one, the understanding of how the world comes in. Right, your contradictions of the world. So I like to say recently, I was saying, is two makes one. It takes two to make one. And the two is a relationship articulable from what's thrown at you, from what you see stuff to be, right? From what you see stuff to be versus how it came to be, right? I can tell you the exact process of what I did to design this, have the sewing machine do it for me on the embroidery machine, cut, torch to get the nice clean finish. But what's ever thrown at you? The patch. That's what's thrown at you. That's what you see right here. Wow, cool, amazing. Your forwarded understanding, your investigation of this object tells you that these jump threads didn't come out of nowhere. You can see that these jump threads, these lines right here, they were from when the needle jumped the stitch to start this hand, for example, or this other part of these sections right here. Now, there's a lot you can get into just on the patch alone, in this specific one, in the design, in the procurement of how it came to be. That is your investigation process, your forwarding process, or I would say your revolutionizing process. You're revolutionizing your understanding of how things are the way they are. You can do the same thing with this patch, or do the same thing with a bunch of like these patches, the stars on them, right? But it's that thrown understanding. I've thrown this at you, right? And you can basically kind of give me a little description of it, right? You've retained some information about this to give me an understanding of what you know about it. Now, if you were to really forward it and understand this as a particular object, then you would investigate it further. ask questions, understand how it came to be. What are the materials that were sourced from this? What are the labors that went into this to make this, to have this physically in my hand to show you right now? Right? Ask your questions. Don't be afraid to ask your questions, right? Asking questions is important to understanding of the world. If you don't ask questions, then all you're left with is what your accumulated understanding of the world is, which is being quickly and fairly quickly outdated second by second, right? So because the world is forever changing, the world forever mutates and goes through this process of self-emerging to create anew out of the old, right? Because things don't just change like that. Inherently so, change comes from itself. Right? When things change, it still embodies itself a portion of, but you still get that fundamental, that principle of what that thing is. Like me or you or another person, different person from they were 5 years ago, but you were still that person 5 years ago, right? You still name yourself as that person. Oh, that person, me back when, that was Jaden 5 years ago. I don't know what the hell he was doing back then, but that guy was doing some other stuff. I'm still that same Jaden from 5 years ago, from 5 years like to now, but I've changed a lot. Right, especially when it comes to the thought, understanding of the world. Oh yeah. So when we go about this understanding of the world, right, we have to understand the third bullet point: progression and conservation. There's many different philosophers, many different spokespersons, professors who give speeches and stuff who go about this understanding. There are two forces in the world, and there's always two, but the one makes up the entire. Two forces in the world: the one that pushes, the one that pulls, or the one that progresses and the one that conserves. And you can pretty much gauge the general population, I guess, so for us, at least humans, who is that progressive force, who is that conservative force, right? And when it comes with age, right, it's very stark difference, right? And I'm not saying there's no outliers, right? There are old people who are progressive, there are young people who are conservative, but generally, right, when you look at the macro scale of how societies progress, it's usually, not all the time, the old that has that conservative force and energy, that reactionary type of thought, because they place themselves in principles at which solidified and materialized, made up the world at which they lived in, in the past. So you have this conservation force as opposed to this progression force, this contradiction in forces at which help perpetuate the world and the way in which we live in it. Right, to establish our technologies, to give us our paths in society, to allow for the structures to be built so that we can enjoy the things that we want to enjoy in this, collective we call society. So in this progression, of course, not always young, but fundamentally progression is that critique of the conservative, and the conservative is to keep that, is to solidify which what was once was into the current now, which is always constantly changing. But there's that contradiction. When things constantly change and the material conditions constantly change, the conservative or the conservation will hold that rearrangement of the material condition. They will hold it in place, even though time itself is diminishing this, this object at hand to wither away over time. Conservation holds this. Conservation holds this type of conservative thought, or, it literally just conserves, right? Conservatism, your bourgeois, your reactionary, takes all of these of what was once, and it could be attributed to nostalgia or whatever. But this primary force of conservation comes from this desire to keep. And this desire to keep, not critique, right, gives us that identity of conservation. It's like, oh, it always is like that, and it always has been like that. So we must keep it like that type of mentality. You'll find it everywhere in different conversations, especially with people, of course, across the ways, across the California ways. You go all the way to the East Coasty ways. You'll find different modes of thought, but generally what the conservative and the conservation mode of thought and what you'll get out of people is that keeping of, and it's usually tradition. And we always say the word tradition, right? I try to skate around the word tradition. Rather, I like to use better words than that to give us a deeper understanding of what we're talking about. But generally, it is that conservation, tradition type of scheme that I want to keep stuff the way it is because it may be a comfort thing, it may be a safety thing, it may be, but more so it pertains to the individual right at hand who is experiencing that. What you see is me spit on my gum. But and then you have on the other hand, so the one hand you have conservation, you have conservatives, and then on the other hand you have progressives in a sense. Now the word itself, progressives, are not as radical as what it used to be, especially nowadays. It's progressives, but generally the left. We can also split this into the left and the right. I don't know which way you're seeing it, left or right. My left, my right. right? So we get into this conversation of revolutionary and reactionary, and we can quickly boil it down into arguments of the left, anti-capitalist, and to the right, pro-capitalist. And pro-capitalist, of course, is that conservation. Capitalism has came and we just want it to go, but it's not going away because individuals want to conserve this type of mode of production. The conservation of which brings out, or it comes from that desire to keep at which that individual, especially in privileged positions, right? Especially with those who have access to capital, right? The access to capital makes someone conservative because they want to conserve, they want to keep that capital, of which that capital has put them in a social strata, definitely in an economic position above everyone else who does not have capital. So there's that conservation, that keeping of things, and in our modern society, it is that keeping of capital, which keeps people conservative. But it's not just capital; it's property as a whole. And coming from a philosophical understanding of how property, exists with people, and understanding and denotating what constitutes as property, right? To me, this is public property. Well, right now it's personal, but as soon as I let this out in the world, it's public now. It's not mine. It's not anyone's. Well, it's anyone's to grab and look at and understand, keep. But this property is what we consider traditional personal and private property conflated inside of this conservative ideology. Personal property, private property, it's all property and we must keep it, right? Not making that distinction at which I can use this for not the sale of a profit, right? This is not private property. I don't make money off of this. This tool does not make me money. If anything, I waste money out of it. But I don't make money off of this, this tool or any of the tools that I use, right? Any of the type of machines that I use to make the patches or the headbands or whatever, the sewing machine or the zines that I make. Nothing is for profit. So I'm not really using this as a capital. It's more personal property that I'm using just for stuff, right? And of course, we make that distinction between private and personal property because of this example. I'm not making money off of this, these zines and these stuffs that I make. Right? It's for the people. I'll ship them out wherever. So you have this personal property, which you're using. Private property, this conservation, of which people want to conserve, utilizes itself. So it's saying now private property, this is being used specifically to cut patches that make me money, right? Anything that is being used to make this. So I cut, the edge and stuff. Now, if I were to sell this, this would start erring on the side of private property. But it depends on the use of that labor, of course, right? We're talking about the dictatorship of the proletariat, or we're talking about any sort of which way to move forward in this socialist movement. We're talking about how to go about addressing the use of this property, right? So the use of this property right now, or this object right here, it's personal, it's for me. I'm doing this stuff for my stuff. But should this go into a business, then it would be considered part of your inventory, as you would say, right? Your business inventory to make it private or private property, so that you can make a profit off of it. That's what makes something private property. If you're not making profit off of it, it's personal property. If you are, like housing and stuff, like complete fucking landlord pieces of shits, right? Buying up homes for Airbnbs. Now, housing should never be a commodity. That's not a radical thing to say. I'll say it all day at the top of my lungs. People should have water for free all the time, food. I'll say it all day long. There's nothing radical about it, to me. But we're talking about property and buying houses, right? The people buying up houses and stuff, it's a commodity. People can buy as much as they want because of the free market. Now, with all that aside, you're taking this house, right, putting up on Airbnb, or you're renting it out. That is considered private property because you yourself, the individual owner, right, recognized by the state, recognized by the institution, you don't live there. Kind of weird, kind of strange. You own a house, but you don't live there because you're making money off of it. Because that you are making money off of it, it is then considered private property. That property which is being used to procure money, a profit. And usually it's going to be all the time, it's going to be over whatever the mortgage payment that landlord is paying for that lot, for that land, for that building, right? So it's you paying $2,500 a month, right, for that property. Your landlord's mortgage for that property is probably only $2,000. So you're always going to pay a little more because that is the incentive to own property, the manufactured incentive, I would say, that profit motive, that profit incentive to charge as much as you can out of the people without them getting too mad, too rioty, too, maybe this is a little doing too much, of which, we're getting to that point. I'm seeing it, we're seeing it slowly happen over the past year. At least for me, I've noticed just a little bit, just a slight rise in consciousness, just not too much now to spark a revolution, but I've seen it. This understanding of maybe the system's fucked, right? Right? Yes, that's why we're gonna get to the point of people's understanding. Maybe the system is fucked. Yes, it is, but it's getting people into that questioning. So, and getting to that question, addressing people's needs. How do you get people to think about it? Because when you go about talking to people, and most for me, it's like people working their 9 to 5s, or people working their long shifts, or people working irregular hours. But it's mostly people just working full time all the time. You don't have the time to question, critique, ponder. People are too tired. And who's to blame for that? Not the individual person. You blame individual people for societal problems. That itself is a problem, right? You have to understand where problems come from for people. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a systemic issue. It's going to be because the collective does not provide for the individual. How and why is the individual supposed to provide for the collective? That's capitalism. It's expecting the individual to do stuff for the society, right? First, rather than, of course, the society, of which who has the means and capability to provide, to give to the people first. Isn't that a little backwards? Isn't that like, what did you want society as a whole because of the collective, because of the amount of means and production, the power of which the people, right, provide for the people, the individual, then the individual trying to provide for society. That's like, I don't know, kind of bass backwards to me. But when we're starting addressing needs, that is when you get to people start thinking. Because when you give people time, they will give you time, right? When you give people the attention and the attention that they deserve, and the time and the credit and the understanding that they are a human being, the people in return will give you time back. Whatever you give out, right? And this is coming from the time banking background understanding. It's when you give out time to people in your community, people will make time to give back to you. It's a give and take. But of course, you have to make that initiative first, of which capitalism tries to monetize every single time. You try to meet someone, they're like, hey, nice to meet you. Would you like to buy something? Or it's like, can I sell you something? I want to sell you something. I'm trying to make money. I'm trying to make this bread, this bank, this bands. And it's gross behavior, right? You're always going up to people and they're and people always try to sell you something, or it's not even that sometimes. It's people not having their needs addressed, of which makes people go into that, petite bourgeois entrepreneurship. I need to start my own thing. Because what do they see in society? People being the most comfortable are the ones who own businesses or have a really good job, of which the good jobs are very hard to come by, right? So what do most people try to attempt to do? Small business. Try to make a business. Your petite bourgeois, your entrepreneurship, all of these things which, utilizes the tools of capitalism only for of course, the benefit of the sole individual, even if that, right? Small businesses fail all the time. Big businesses fail too. Whether by merger, like, of course, corporate finance, or by just straight up chop and block. Just like that business is no longer good. People don't want to go there anymore. But you have these different types of people who needs these different types of needs. And addressing those needs will allow people to have a breather, have a moment, right? As we say, revolution is a marathon, not a sprint. If you try to sprint the entire way, you're going to, burn out, as we would say. In your first couple hundred meters when the marathon's like miles long, right? So the strike and the revolution are marathons. We should be addressing the needs on a general to grasp understandings of how to get to the particular, and this marathon and the addressing of the needs of the general will help us make a plan, help us understand where we need to focus our energy, focus the pace of the run, right? Focus the pace of the marathon. Because having a general direction and a general need, right, especially a general strike, we're just doing whatever we need to raise revolutionary consciousness, to get people banded together, to build networks, to build connections. That's why we're here right now in phase 1. It's to build our network. It is to build a structure at which will supply the mutual aid networks in the future that we will build. Right. First, it takes you to know someone. Then it takes for that person to do stuff after you've known them. Most often, people won't do stuff unless you know them, or people won't do stuff unless you tell them what's going on, right? During the Black Panthers emerging of the survival programs, when they were trying to establish survival programs, free school lunch for school children, clinics, transportation services, self-defense education classes, and stuff like that. The Black Panthers went up to strangers, and they first talked about, of course, the program. They talked about what it is, how it's going. They go with an introduction. You need to establish a rapport with the people. You need to establish some connection. And that's what phase 1 is about, baby. That's what we're doing here, to make those connections. And addressing the needs of the general is how you do that, because everyone needs help. right? Everyone needs some sort of type of help, assistance, because we're living here is hard. Living here by yourself, no individual can live by themselves in a society. Who built the mansion for the billionaires? A bunch of bricklayers, a bunch of people, plumbers, electricians, right? A crew of people with specialized skills to make housing. That's just one aspect. What about farmers, right? For food, those specialized skills and talents and the tools and the machinery, the means of producing that food itself, another aspect. We're not even getting to psychological health now, or the entertainment of the superstructure to help us, cope with the fact that, in most philosophies, we say that we're suffering in life, right? Life is about suffering. So the purpose of society from that standpoint of view is to lessen the suffering. Isn't that like, the point of society is to lessen our suffering here on earth? Now, no matter what you believe in, isn't that, kind of the point? It's not to compete with one another to make people suffer more while other people like suffer way less. Some people don't suffer at all, while people in the world, somewhere in the world, are only know nothing but suffering. It's crazy. It's insane. But that's what we go about when addressing the needs. Building solidarity first, building our network, gathering this. You need help. We will, work with you to get your help. That it is meeting people where they're at, right? Meeting people halfway only works when both parties have the means to get halfway. But if we have the means, of course, to reach all the way out to the individual, we're going to be reaching out all the way to the individual, right? We're going to make it as easy as possible when establishing this network to get people the needs that, they need so that they can help us strike, so that they can help us revolutionize. Because you can't fight a revolution on empty stomach, on no empty mind, with an undefended mind and body. It's not going to happen, right? You're not going to get individuals to tell them it's important to do this strike, to come together. But if they're hungry, if they're starving, if they're not housed, if they don't feel like their needs are met and secured and they don't feel good about themselves, the individual's not going to do anything, right? So we must meet people where they're at, right? No matter where they're at, we must meet them, for they are individuals too. They are people. Right? Everyone's a person, right? So we must, of course, address that general. We are here to help the general. Like, we are going to make things better. We're going to strike. We want, all these demands met and such, all of the general stuff, to gather people under an umbrella and a network, to establish this get to knowing to each other, to establish this mutual solidarity, to establish this this network, these conditions, at which then we can build on top a mutual aid network, which will supply the needs of the people. And that is where you get into the particular, your mutual aid networks. So we discuss the general. I want to help people. I want to feed people. I want to get people housed. I want to do X, Y, Z, or maybe we should come together, protest and whatnot. That's the general. That is the kind of like, the umbrella term of gathering the people and the masses, coordinating, organizing their needs towards a specific point. And the point, of course, is the particular. So how are you going to get the mutual aid network set up? How are you going to address the needs of the people to get them fed, bed, and read, right? To educate the masses. How are you going to do that? And that is kind of like the other half. I would say a little more than half. It's like a 70%, like 30-70, 70 of which you get into that particular. How do we exactly get, like, we want to say we want to help people get educated. How do we go about it? There's many different ways to get people educated. You can do physical media, zines, booklets, pamphlets, talking to people, verbiage, or you can make videos about not even just political education. It could really just be videos about, if you know sewing techniques. Sorry, burping. I would still watch videos about sewing techniques. I'm trying to get my little sewing game up, but it could also be about other things. Hydroponics could be another thing if you're interested in, or if you already have the means to. You can make a write-up, a guide, a video, or even just share it with a couple people. You don't have to put it like, be out there doing as much as you can for the people. Ideally, I don't like using the word ideally, but, really we need to have people build a dozen or so intimate relationships than having, thousands of followers online. Because a dozen intimate, personal, material relationships has a lot more of an impact than you knowing 5,000 people who have a parasocial relationship with you, So dozens of relationship in person. But of course, if you don't have the access and means to in person, you're not locked out of this game. Everyone can get game in here. Everyone can provide and understand and contribute to the cause which we're trying to further, right? The strike. So your educational material can be anything and everything. And going and doing research about time banking and stuff, really anything can be used as like a value for people to, have, to share, and to appreciate. So I could write up guides about fixing cars, stuff like that. Do videos about time banking. And I like to help people understand that is, doing your part and doing that for your interests. And especially since you're already interested in it, you're going to provide that much more value, to the content that you're making or to whatever, right? It doesn't have to be a video or whatnot. Even if you're talking to one person or a couple people in, like, face to face on the street, at a store or wherever, you're getting that human connection, that conversation is happening, because shit only happens when people do stuff, and if people don't do stuff, shit don't happen. And part of that shit happening, or what you want that shit to happen, is to get those conversations going, is to talk to people. Now, I've failed a couple times. I've noticed people on the side of the road who have like a flat tire or something like that, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm like in the fast lane, I'm going fast, and then I see people on the other side on the shoulder, on closer to the exits, and I'm like, oh, let me go wrap around, right? Make them exit, take time out of my day to exit, and then try to see if these people need help. And twice this past week, the one time, I don't know what happened in the 5 minutes where I turned around, but they got help already. Oh, okay. But that's what I like to see, like people knowing people to get them help. That's what comforts me, right? If people didn't have people to help them, that scares me. It doesn't give me any sleep knowing that people out there don't have the means and access to help. But that's where you go out and start your conversations and start your, building your relationships. When relationships are built, you have those that connections, you have that access to need and to help. That's where time banking comes in to provide that structure. But if you could just go into, a community place, not so a restaurant, but like, third spaces don't exist anymore. But if you go into a space where people just like loiter and hang out and start striking up conversations, building those connections, that's a very good thing to do. You should be doing that. Of course, if you have the means and access to. Here is no different as well. All right, what I'm doing right now, like yapping to you guys about this, it's not really political education, but it's just more so this revolutionary understanding. It's just getting people the idea and understanding of how to have conversations, because conversations themselves between two workers, especially discussing the political climate, it is a revolutionary act. Rosa Luxemburg, the revolutionary thing that you do right now is simply just to exclaim what is happening, right? That's a revolutionary thing you can do, and it is revolutionary because when you start discussing the, political climates or economic climates or whatever you want to discuss that is currently happening, you are making people aware of the material condition of which contain all of these, phenomena and forces. So Rosa Luxemburg, a revolutionary thing you can do is to exclaim what's happening. You can just do that with the people around you, people here in the Discord, on the chat. Maybe, we want to go into a voice channel, talk to people about stuff. That itself is a revolutionary thing. You're making apparent and aware the material conditions shared which we exist in, right? Understanding or at least discussing about it instead of, hiding yourself away alone in your thoughts. Because in your thoughts, nothing materially changes. You may change yourself, you're pondering as the individual, but you're not going to make any material change out of the thoughts. You're just changing yourself. The changing of yourself, of which will provide that change, right, expressed into the material condition, because you yourself would have changed. But it's only when you make that action, right? And, it does take people doing stuff to make stuff happen, right? That action. But of course, I read this somewhere. Don't quote me at all. Maybe I'm just shitting this on my ass. But most people don't like to do stuff because, and me too, I don't like to fail. I don't like to, I don't like to be perceived as a fail or, to have that fear of rejection. Now we're getting our little humps, right? To me, not so much. I'll fail whenever, we'll make a ha giggle hee hee out of it. You know how many headbands I made before it came out looking like this? Don't ask me how. It was a lot. But it did take me a while to get to this point, right? The reason why it looks like this is because I've spent hours and hours. This itself is a phenomena of throw. What you see here looks like, I won't say professional, semi-professional. It's a headband, right? My first headband, though, that's in the trash. It's in the trash. It's long gone now. It was not a good piece. But it is that hours and hours of throw, and especially with whatever skills that you have, the hours and hours that you dedicate to that, you are presencing yourself with those tools and those means, which is a special skill. And I like to do this. I like to do this little example right here. So you're at a store, right? And you get some stuff. You go up to the cashier, go to the register, right? So anyone who doesn't work as a cashier or, in a retail, right, will not know how a cashier works or how a till works. And so I always say, is it really unskilled labor if you don't know how to do that yourself? Like if you, the individual customer, right, were put in front of a till, would you know how to work it? If the answer is no, most of the time it is, that is a skilled labor. It's a skill. You've dedicated hours, or at least you've dedicated your time to understand how to operate the machinery at which you're given. Most people know how to work a fucking till, right? I barely remember how to work a till. I haven't worked retail in hell long, but that is a special skill. That is something that most people don't have access to. That is a skill. Don't let people tell you that there's unskilled labor. Unskilled labor is capitalist mythology. Like, unskilled labor is on the same level of pulling up your bootstraps will get you money. That's kind of how I view unskilled labor. It's like, well, unskilled labor. Are you telling me that there's people who just invest time in useless things? Nothing's really useless. It's how you go about using those skills. From a till, from your standpoint, from the cashier standpoint, the customer would not be able to have that smooth transaction of getting the item of whatever they want off the shelf and then, quickly exiting the store after having that transaction at the point of sale, your till, without that special labor, without that curated understanding of how to use the machine in front of you to conduct the transaction in a smooth way. In that sort of way, the customer themselves, they would not know how to handle the till. They would not know how to handle a rush, like a Black Friday. I've worked Black Friday once, twice. I've worked it twice. Retail, nope, never send me back. I'll never do that again, right? But I'll pray for my soldiers, or the working class proletariat who has done that. They have my respect. That's insane. Right? Black Friday, crazy. Oh man, that's sleeping at work too. Yeah, it's like work is draining and stuff, and especially in the ways that we do it the bourgeois type of workplace, the workplace at which is hierarchical, the workplace at which is institutionalized, the workplace at which does not give a damn about the worker. Right, your bourgeois workplace. That is the bourgeois workplace. The proletariat workplace, though, is pretty cool. This would be considered kind of a proletariat workplace because we're just here doing whatever we want, doing anything. What's going on? The bourgeois workplace mandates you to give up certain rights. Like we talked about this last week. When you go into the job and you sign your employment contract, I am now an employee of Rayleigh's. I'm now an employee of Safeway or wherever. I'm an employee somewhere. You give up certain rights. You give up your freedom of speech, for example. You can't just tell your boss, fuck off. You're going to get fired. You're going to lose your opportunity of employment. So you lose your freedom of speech, it's restricted. You may not lose it entirely, right? But it's restricted heavily. It's you're not allowed to say certain things, you're not allowed to do certain things, especially at some businesses. Like if you want to practice your religion, you can't do that. So no freedom of religion. But your enterprise, of course, your private enterprise, your bourgeois workplace strips a lot of rights away from you. All so that you can procure this paycheck thing, this money things, the acclamations of your value handed to you on a piece of paper or direct deposited. I'll prefer direct deposit. But you have all of your labor consolidated, right, from that giving of your rights and consent. Now, in libertarian theory, I haven't read this book in a while. I might have to reach back. I really don't want to. It's libertarian theory. But as far as libertarian theory goes, the act of consent and the act of, they call it another word as well, but it was this consent thing to do whatever at which you wanted, like to pay, consent, to compensate, right, this individual to do something. Your monies would be acceptable in that terms of service, that contract. So now it's like very general language what the libertarian used in that book, but breaking it down, the employer can do whatever they want to you. This was like way before. This was like true capitalism. This was like true business. People just doing stuff, no regulation and stuff like that. The boss can do whatever he wants to you with your body because you've signed this contract based off your pay, right? So you commit yourself into a sort of a rhythm, a rearrangement for the interest of your corporation or your enterprise because you are getting paid, because you are getting this, because you signed that contract. For $20 an hour, I will stock shelves, help customers, run the till, go to the back, right? Help clean up the store. You do all of these things in your employment contract, and you give up certain rights for that. And in libertarian theory, you are consenting to the employer to do whatever you want with your bodies or persons during that allotted time, right? So under slavery and under slave motive productions, there were no contracts. You were just bought outright as a person. It's ridiculous now to say. But this is so ridiculous now to say, right? Our slave motive productions, there was no these contracts. You just did whatever you did. right? Slaves were provide housing. No, I'm not saying like this is like a good thing for slaves. It's going to be a little bit more. Slaves had housing, food, and all these other things. Nowadays, you are slaved by the hour. You are not guaranteed housing. You're not guaranteed food. You're not guaranteed anything besides the wage and paycheck, so long as you subscribe and align with the contract, your employment contract. And that's where you get your terms like you're firing, or it's like you're not doing your job, you're fired, or you're not doing X, Y, and Z, or you're like you spoke out of line, freedom of speech removed, fired, bam. In our slave modes of production, there were some guarantees. Well, because you were outright, you were considered property, so they had to, they were obligated, I guess, to keep the slave alive. Now you're slaved hourly. The employer has no obligations to keep you alive, like for at the expense of the employer. At the expense of the employer, some nice businesses will give you health insurance. That still doesn't cover shit. Some nice employers will give you a 401k, at which you'll probably never cash out, ever, right? So in this slave society, slave modes of production, you actually had some guarantees. Now, the shitty work conditions, right, would rather be a wage slave than an actual slave. But under the wage slave mode of production, this type of paying people, the capitalist mode of production, employers don't have to do any of that shit for you. They could just pay you your wage and then let the free market decide on how to take care of you. Let the free market decide how much your house costs. Let the free market decide how much your groceries are, type shit. Right. So the employer has relieved that reliance, or has relieved themselves of that obligation for their worker, so they can focus on the big bucks, the profits and stuff. And so I know we're getting off a little sidetrack, and I'm gonna dip into the Vanguard right now and then try to relate to what we're saying here. So when you're working at a job, right, you give up some rights and stuff, but understand how and why you are doing that, right? Understand why, because when you're born in the world, you're thrown into it. A lot of people who already been here kind of have a little bit of experience what's going on. They know a thing or two, maybe 3 or 4, about the material condition, about how systems and processes work, how the institution carries out and plays, and the interactions we make through the material condition, and how they come up to be, what shape us as people. When people are born, they're thrown into it. They don't know anything. Babies don't know anything. You ask a baby a question, low key, babies are dumb. They're not going to know anything. So the baby learns and they grow and they understand the world of from which they know, right? So human behavior is learned. The way people act is the way people see and the way people observe the material condition. So if the individual is in such, these scarce conditions, or in these non-loving conditions, of course they will grow up to be non-loving. There will be brass individuals, right? Growing up without this sort of attention and care and love and stuff like that, TLC and such. They will grow up to be whatever they expose themselves to in the material condition. So if it was a kind of a harsh, rough background, the majority of the time the individual is going to grow up rough, and harsh, right? So it's not. Of course, there are outliers as well, as we said in the beginning. Right, revolutionaries and reactionaries, or you're gonna have different types of people on, you're gonna have different people everywhere. And the same thing goes with here, right? Just because someone grew up poor and bad doesn't mean they're gonna grow up poor and bad, like beat ass people. Majority of the time, right? We're talking about the general right now. When we get into the particular, the Vanguard, the individual in the politically conscious detachment of a particular group, usually the working class. When we talk about the Vanguard, addresses these needs of the particular, addresses how people grow up and such, addresses how people can, observe and learn from the material conditions to help them better equip themselves to live in the material condition. Because wouldn't it be nice to know a little more about life? Then you get into it, right? You feel like in this current, especially here in the imperial core, U.S., states, raw America, no one really prepares you on how to go about and conduct life. Right, even taxes thing. I'm way past the taxes thing. Don't teach kids about the bourgeois taxes and stuff like that. But pertinent to economics, taxes isn't taught. Home rec isn't taught, or is it home ec? Homes classes like cooking and stuff and cleaning and self-care not taught. It has on purpose as well, right? Though remember Rockefeller, that person, that rich guy, that fucking asshole, that bourgeoisie guy. Rockefeller, yeah, that guy said he didn't want a population of thinkers, innovators, human beings. He wanted cogs to a machine. Rockefeller wanted the U.S. education system to churn out workers. That's what we got, and that's what we have right now. we're all turned out to be workers because the school day mimics the work day. Instead of 8 to 3, 9 to 3, 7 to 4, depending on your school, now it's a 9 to 5. Now, instead of tests, there are reports. Now, instead of work, schoolwork, it's work, right? It's profit-based motive work. So the relationship between the education and the workplace, not so much different. They're intended to be models based off of each other. I guess the education force is modeled after the workforce, right? The Vanguard addresses this contradiction, and it is a contradiction to have the education place function as a workplace, right? Why would you have people be educated in similar ways as the workplace unless you intended them to get knee deep in work? In the capitalist mode of production, that's what happened. That's what they got, and that's what they wanted, right? That's what the capitalist individuals wanted. Capital owners, private property owners, want workers so that they can work on the private property. If you don't have workers on your private property, you don't make money. You don't make profit. There's no profit made from empty lot with no people working on it. So you must reproduce and have workers to come up to show up on your private property, whether it be at your Walmart, Target, Safeway, maybe it be another thing, another enterprise and what sort and whatnot, to keep churning that profit. Because tools by themselves, they don't do anything. These scissors don't do anything by themselves unless I, the laborer, make those cuts, right? Cars don't get fixed out of shop when the mechanics don't show up. Packages don't get delivered when the drivers don't show up. But drivers or packages do get delivered when the boss doesn't show up. There. Connecting the dots there, right? Understand what the boss does at the workplace. Jeff Bezos, that guy, he says he makes high quality, a low amount of high quality decisions. The fuck does that mean, right? I can make a bunch of low, high quality decisions, right? It doesn't mean that anything will get done from it. He makes those decisions, and then people labor to make those decisions happen and materialize. So who really made stuff happen, right? Was it the Bezos? Was it that Bezos guy? Was it Mr. Amazon.com? Or was it, the laborers who actually pushed those packages, package handlers who moved it from belt to belt, from belt to box, and then box to truck, and then truck to a house, or truck to any sort of commercial place, to deliver the package. So I'll say it again. Packages don't get delivered when drivers don't show up, but packages get delivered when the boss doesn't show up, right? I've had many a times when I was a mechanic, boss was sick, or like boss called out, or he was out doing stuff, and the shop still ran. But all of a sudden when I call off, or when I do something, it's all, hey, what are you doing? You can't do that. You're a worker. Hey, I'm just trying to live a life here, So understand, cars don't get fixed when the mechanics don't show up. Patients don't get given care when the caregivers don't show up, but the patients still get care when the boss doesn't show up. The boss ain't doing all that. The boss ain't doing none of that. So it's really understanding, where does the impact come from? Where does the profit come from, right? The Vanguard teaches this. The Vanguard makes us apparent of this fact, right? Because we're all workers. We're all doing stuff, right? Maybe not all workers, right? I'll say it. I'm unemployed, so I'm not really a worker right now. But, we are working towards this collective. And so what makes that profit? What makes something actually occur? Is it the boss who makes those high quality decisions? Or is it the laborer, the worker that churns out that labor and work, that actually makes stuff, that actually connect, and that the chair maker actually makes the chair? The boss just watches that person make the chair, right? And every single time, oh my God, I just remembered when I was a mechanic at UPS, it got fucking hot in the building. We were inside, and we were one of those privileged buildings. It was a fairly new building. It got constructed that year. It was an inside shop. It was pretty cool, but wasn't pretty cool. There was no fucking insulation in that building. It was wooden top, no insulation on the walls, and then a concrete floor, which kind of, bounced off some heat, really. But every time I would go to work, this would be like late at night, the heat would die down, but then boss man would come out of his air conditioned office, be like, what's going on, guys? It's kind of warm out here. It's like, kind of warm. I'm gonna sock someone. But right, the Vanguard teaches this. I'm trying to backtrack on this. The Vanguard teaches these revolutionary thought, this understanding of how the material condition works. This will explain to you why your boss is like that, and will explain to you why the workers are, in the relationship that they are like this, right? And then of course it's up to the individual to connect those dots, to make that think piece, to understand, maybe it is, I am the one, doing all the work, and I do deserve all of the profit, right? That's That's a revolutionary thought. That's that workers' rights. That's the old school union thought. And I love my unions. Love the old school. I'll bash your windows. Kind of violent unionists, but they were violent for a reason. No, boss man, I'm not gonna work 12 fucking hours in a day when you pay me $2 an hour. Pay me more, cut my hours, or I'm gonna smash your car window in. Whoa. I'm not saying we'll do that. We'll never do that. Destroying property is a little bit of an archaic type of protest, right? You don't need to destroy property nowadays. You just go through litigation over everything, which is preferred democracy, right? Going through your bureaucracy to hash things out. But of course, push comes to shove. I'm not saying guillotines don't exist, but the Vanguard will teach you about that. The Vanguard will teach you how to use the guillotine. The Vanguard will teach you, of course, as this intentionally political apparatus of any movement, or the class, this working class, the Vanguard will understand and make sense of what is happening, teach it to the masses, and then, have this relationship between this politically conscious group and the people that are being guided by in this revolution. So the Vanguard, of course, has this relationship, and there's two, right? We discussed this over the correct handling of a revolution by Huey P. Newton. One of the passages in there. The relationship between the Vanguard and the masses is a secondary relationship. The relationship between the members in the Vanguard are primary. In order for the state machinery to run effective, this Vanguard party needs to maintain a primary relationship to understand each other. So it's not like CEOs with their board of members, with their CFOs, financial officers, COOs, operational officers, and stuff like that. It's not like that. It's not like a core hierarchical organized team that does top down stuff. The Vanguard, hand in hand with the people, guide. It's more like like you point it into a direction. You just point into a direction, and the masses will move in that direction. Maybe not totally in that one, but in the general direction. In a hierarchical, traditional, centralized organization like a company or enterprise corporation, it is that top down. It is that, spearheading forward into the single direction and then taking everyone along with you. At the general strike, and specifically when you're talking about the Vanguard, it is more of a push hand in hand with the people, right? So it's not this like spearhead, we're going this direction, we're doing it this way. The revolution and the Vanguard, and the purpose of that Vanguard is to help people go move in a general direction, is to make people understand, hey guys, anti-capitalism, this way, and then everyone will start walking this way. Maybe they'll walk off this way, maybe they'll walk off this way, but so long as you're getting them in that upward direction, that is kind of the purpose of the Vanguard, to collect and organize the masses, educate them on how to understand the material condition, right? Not to tell them what to think about the material condition, but help them understand how to, because everyone lives in different conditions. Everyone lives in different capacities at which they can express themselves, different ways that they can attain the needs that they need and have, the different institutions in their areas which affect their lives, right, beneficial or harmful. Everyone lives in different conditions. So we're not telling anyone what to think. You must do this X, Y, and Z because we say, and that's how it is for us, and it's going to be how it is for you, right? No, that's not how it works. The Vanguard especially gives resources and the tools, provides them the ability to, of course, have that self-determination. That's at the core of the Vanguard, right? To promote self-determination, right? Traditional organizations, centralized, you kind of give up sort of that self-determination, because now you're not determining yourself, the movement of a particular organization or movement, right? So you're not the one saying, I'm self-determining, I want to go this way. If you're part of a centralized organization, you are at the whims of the head of the organization, of which you can align yourself with, right? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being a subordinate to an individual you like and stuff, right? The processes of exploitation and that, inherency of that lacking of freedoms, that giving up, must be articulated in a relationship, observed, right? So in a boss and employer situation, that is exploitation. But when you're taking orders from a comrade, right, it's about how you go about using that relationship, because a boss don't give no shit about the employee, right? Even out of the goodness of their heart, they love the people. It's the people they love, not the employee, because the employee and the boss are there for a job, right? There is a relationship professional at which separates the relationship personal. In a Vanguard, those relationships are intertwined, right? Because professionally, or what you ever do for your work, is going to embody yourself. So the Vanguard, of course, must consist of tested revolutionaries, must be consisting of revolutionary individuals, revolutionary suicidal individuals, as Huey P. Newton would say. So revolutionary suicide guides this vanguard, which they all dedicate themselves into the purposes of raising the collective consciousness of the people. The vanguard, as revolutionary suicidals, right? These individuals take serious the propositions of whatever the antithetical mode of production and materialize it, right? Antithetical from capitalism, right? They take serious the process of how to establish socialism, or of course to more directly address the needs of the people. To take the general, right? People are suffering, and how do we address the particular, right? Feeding people and stuff, the logistics of how to, maybe the price and cost of how to feed the people, setting up events, tabling, going to protests, and stuff like that. So the vanguard, of course, takes that general from that revolutionary mindset and boils it down to the particular for the people so that they can address the needs efficiently. That's what happens with the Black Panthers. Like, Black Panthers saw kids not being fed. Man, that's an atrocity. Kids should be fed. So what they did? Took the general. Kids need to be fed. Feed them kids. Feed them little babies. What do they do with the particular? Fed them fucking babies. And they coordinated with nutritionists. They set up places in parks and tabled a bunch. And there's a lot of particulars that went into this general feeding of the kids. But that is what the vanguard does. It is an intentional force that addresses needs. Because not everyone is going to be a part of the vanguard. Not everyone's going to be this politically conscious, because you don't need to. There really is no need for anyone to be this politically conscious and this advocate, right? Because there is something to advocate against. And that is the reason why there must exist this intentional detachment. If everyone were to have this, set of mentality and such, the revolution would just be like, bam, like that. It would just be over, done. A spontaneous action from the working class, that would just be shit, revolution over. No more capitalists, because everyone would have an understanding of how to conduct this revolution themselves, and some people would have the means, some people wouldn't have the means. But since everyone would have this thought, revolution would be whoop, way over. But notice how it's not, right? Notice how revolution is kind of the slow halt. And of course, you'll have the opposition, your capitalists, your ruling class, to diminish any sort of revolutionary movement. Same way that the kings and the queens of the feudal lords' times were punishing and squashing bourgeois movements. Because the bourgeoisie just did not pop in out of nowhere. There was a mode of thought at which, they wrestled with to get to the point of where they can call themselves bourgeois or bourgeoisie, right? Against the feudal times of, the late 13, 14, 1500, the kings and queens times, there was a section, a bourgeoisie, kind of like there is a proletariat now under the bourgeoisie. So the bourgeois themselves existed under feudal times, oppressed. They were an oppressed class. You don't want to talk about how the bourgeois ruling class were oppressed, because they weren't the ruling class at the time. Separated. Bourgeois, not ruling class. The bourgeois are a particular part of people. They just so happen to be that ruling class now because they rule, because they oppress. The monarchs and the absolutists were a part of that ruling class in feudal times, oppressing bourgeois entity and bourgeois apparatus, right? Nowadays, in the 21st century, in the big 2-5, man, that's bourgeois in the ruling class position, oppressing the proletariat. We, us. And it all goes into the understanding of the relation of production, right? Because in bourgeoisie versus the monarchs and the lords, there was a distinct difference in the relation of production between the owners, the feudal lords, and the producers, like the individual, we would say peasants or serfs, right? The individuals who owned the means of which then they were extracted their labor of and all of their resources of for the king, for the private interest and benefit, to generalize it. Now what you see is the proletariat, those who don't even have the means of production. We're no peasants, we're no serfs. We only have our labor to sell, which makes us proletariat, not bourgeois. And bourgeois, of course, the capital owning, of which that capital owning resides in this ruling class, of which the ruling class has taken apparatus like the state and its military and its armed forces to enforce this ideology and this mode of production, right? The same way that the kings did with their swords, with their knights and their horses, they would enforce that ideology and that mode of production. That feudal type of relationship of producing stuff. Yeah, that is how the state itself, as an apparatus, the monarchs use the state as an oppressive apparatus against the bourgeois to keep this dynamic going. Of course, the dynamic never stayed, and so it was eventually revolutionized, overturned through bourgeois revolution. The American Revolution, bourgeois revolution. French Revolution, bourgeois revolution. all these revolutions were not in the advocacy of people, but in the advocacy of how to, play chess and play checkers with the mode of production, with the relation of production. Who owns what? Who gets what? Who produces what? Who labors what? Now, those were the questions they were wrestling in the feudal times, revolution, pending revolution to bourgeois era, the way we live now. They're asking these questions, not who can fairly and equally among all, because understand where capitalism most emerged from. White Eurocentric Europe. It's Eurocentric capitalism. Now, it's not totality, right? You can have capitalism, and there exists capitalism in other parts of the country, more so because of that Eurocentric aspect. But right, capitalism itself is a phenomenon which could exist in sort of this historical vacuum. You could explain the conditions, and it could exist at any point in period of time. It's just how historically it has developed came from this Eurocentric idea, and that's kind of where we get that white supremac, kind of like hierarchical, patriarchal type of feel when we discuss capitalism, because that's all embedded with it. The land from the lands of the kings and queens and lords and gods and divine right, birthed out, shitted out capitalism. You can explain why it is the way it is, right? There's no foreign idea where it's like capitalism, such an interesting weird beast that we have no idea of where it came from. We know exactly where it came from. Europe, Eurocentric kind of ideas that gave way with that mode of thought, that philosophy, that liberal, natural liberty philosophy baked within this mode of production. And it's no surprise to see how it is the way it is, right? Right to refuse work, right to refuse service. You have a bunch of rights, and people embody these rights as absolute. It's like, I can do whatever I want. And of course, in this capitalist mode of production, you really can't. You're forced to. Ideologically, the individual can do whatever they want. Materially, unless that individual doesn't want to live anymore. And I like to wager, I like to bet that most people would like to live. Living is a good experience. Even though it's all about suffering, at least you're still here. You might as well be here and stay here. But of course, going back, I'm reading my notes again, the Vanguard. Vanguard teaches all this stuff. And of course, the Vanguard is that intentional group that does that teaching. It does that addressing. Because not everyone needs to know about that stuff. That's why we're here. That's why you're here in the session, right? Once a week, you'll hear me talking politically yap about stuff that you may not hear every single day, right? This is what it's to be a part of the Vanguard, or to be a part of that movement, to raise the collective consciousness of the people, to get people questioning, get people understanding the material condition. Because if I didn't do this, then more people would be just like out lost in the world. I don't know what to do, or maybe not know what to think about. This gives you something to think about. My biggest goal with this, right, in honor of that quality of the Vanguard, to raise collective consciousness, to address the masses, the needs of the masses, is to get people thinking. Right, all I'm here is to get people, their gears turning, their thought process going, the critical thought building, especially through dialectical materialism, of which I like to use as a tool to ease people into communism. Like that's, if you want to ask me how I radicalize people, I just talk straight dialectical materialism. The word is so removed from the word communism that I can openly talk about the methodology and the analysis, the scientific method of how to analyze the world and the material condition. It sounds like a complete different field of study, and it kind of is. Right, but they're so inextricably connected to communism that should an individual understand and appreciate dialectical materialism, they will naturally fall upon this socialist leaning, this left leaning kind of ideology. Because dialectical materialism helps you break down the world. It gets you questioning, gets you asking why things are the way they are. It's not just like billionaires bad, but why? Right? You could say billionaires are bad, right? You'd be a reactionary. You'd just be like, yeah, they're billionaires. I heard that word. I recognize what that means to me. They're bad. They're bad people. I'm like, okay, why are they bad? I'm not disagreeing with that they're bad, but why? Having that investigation and that understanding, that thoroughness to check in why you are correct, right? Just to be correct. That's anyone can do that. Anyone can go on a whim and be like, yeah, I said that. That's correct. But understanding why and how you are correct, or why and how you can explain the phenomena, or that that phrase, billionaire bad. Why is that true? You investigate it. That dialectical materialism helps people investigate, of which, again, the Vanguard teaches this dialectical materialism, this type of process, but not so much through education, right? First and foremost, the Vanguard is to, of course, educate, but not so much in this direct way of talking, using this type of language and tone this analyzing of the material condition to articulate such and such, conceptualize, articulate, and share. The Vanguard usually does this by feeding the people, giving people spaces to express themselves and talk, giving people the time and attention that they deserve. That itself is a revolutionary act of which will give them time to think for themselves, right? Because the individual person in society is always thinking about themselves, but themselves from a layer of this bourgeois lifestyle. It's this, what can I do for myself to make money? It's not what can I do for myself to help people, right? It's what can I do to get my bread up, to get my gang up, to get my band. Need some bands. That's the kind of mode of thought that, at least what I've encountered most of the time when going out and about. It's like, oh, how are you making money? Or what do you do? Like, do you own a business? Like, it's I don't know, it's kind of gross to me. Just like going out talking to people, and then immediately their first thought, like when I bring up discussion, they're like, oh, you own a business, or oh, where do you work? Right? It's always this like entry into bourgeois lifestyle. And well, really, that's what people know, right? I'm not saying that people are dumb, people are idiots, they're not good people. No, it's all what people all know. If they only know bourgeois lifestyle, of course they're going to integrate and shit out the bourgeois understanding of the world. That is where we come in with dialectical materialism, baby. Bourgeois hate to see dialectical materialism come through, because dialectical materialism will just fill in shit on bourgeois ideology all day, every day, because it provides a better understanding of how the world works, right? Bourgeois ideology will say that people are greedy because because people are just bad. There are bad people in the world. Just forget about it. They're bad people. They're good and bad people. But never why. But never asking yourself, why are people bad? Why do people become bad? That is the type of like dialectics, becoming. Because in the material condition, human behavior is learned. People become. People don't just are born bad. People aren't just born good either. People are born, I would say, as like this neutral slate, but the slate itself ingrained with all of the personality and characteristics of the individual that cannot be separated from that person's identity. Everyone starts off at this unique blank slate, as I would say. Like blank, unique, kind of a contradiction. But each individual is born as this unique, like telling blank slate, ready to be painted and printed on by the material condition, by the forces of the world. You would still have characteristics and qualities that make it inherently unique, but of course it will be telling of what that individual experiences, addresses, and exists as from those forces imposing upon it. Right? Human behavior is learned, right? Some things are tropismatic, instinctual. Some things are like automatically instinctual, like being hungry. I don't control when I'm hungry. Wish I could. My food schedule is all fucked up. I don't control when I sleep. I get tired, but sometimes some lows, some highs. I'll get tired sometimes at some points of the night. Sometimes I won't. Some things are inherent, some things are tropismatic. But majority of the fact of the labor of our understandings of the world and our developed consciousness, human behavior is learned. And if you can learn, if you can teach it, you can. If you can learn it, you can teach it, right? So people are not inherently good or bad. I would err on the side of good. Just from the standpoint of a cooperation standpoint, from a cooperative understanding, humans are naturally cooperative and dependent on one another, right? Sharing resources is almost a given. I'm not sure if you guys seen on your little For You pages I have. I've been scrolling a while. Kids, tiny children with their parents, and they would have napkins out in front of them or paper towels covering cookies, and you would have three of them: the mom, the kid, and the dad, right? Or whatever, or rearrangement. You just have your adults and the child. And the child is the main focus of this experiment that they do. It's when you have these paper towels in front of you, there's cookies under them, but the one parent has one, the kid has two, and the other parent doesn't have any, right? And then we go 1, 2, 3, lift your paper towel. Oh my God, the kid has two, the mom has one, but the dad doesn't have a cookie for themselves. Naturally, what kids will do, and this is a great thought experiment for like individual thing. No, humans are naturally greedy. They'll want to take. 9 times out of 10, the kid will, here you go, now you have a cookie. And the kids will even go as far as redoing the entire experiment. Be like, okay, now you have a cookie, put your paper towel back on. So we can all experience having a cookie when we open it up. But the base and what I'm trying to get at is that people are not inherently greedy. That's kind of a weird thing. People may be inherently, cooperative. I want to say go as far as saying as like completely, I want to say evangelical. Just like completely good people, like inherent, like super pure good. People aren't inherently good people either. People make mistakes all the time. But what I'm saying is that inherent greed is not a thing. Greed is something that manifests and comes out of the individual as a learned behavior. right? When you live in scarce conditions, you're gonna be a little greedy. You're gonna like not know when stuff is gonna come back to you or be available for you. That is where greed comes from, and especially when people you live in a world where it's all take, then you yourself, of course, are gonna have that greed mindset. It's like, oh, if I don't have it now, I'm gonna get taken from. I'm gonna have not anything for myself. Scarcity mindset, manufactured scarcity mindset, mind you. That is the world that we live in. We've solved production in terms of numbers, in terms of how we can provide. There are more houses than homeless in the world. There is more food to give out. People have full bellies, right? When people are starving, it's ridiculous. It is a distribution problem, right? A production problem. Yeah, you could definitely make a production more efficient, but more so, this is a distribution problem that we're seeing. The distribution of which maintained through the relationship of private property. Who can pay for that, right? The barrier of entry and access to value. Oh my God. Why is no one telling me it was like way over? It was like, it's like 5:16 right now. You people hearing me yapping stuff and whatnot. We'll go for a couple more minutes. My goodness. I don't know I was yapping all that long. But when you get into people's needs and stuff, and we're going to go back, right? People's needs, and when you address those needs, you get more people's time. And time is what contributes to material change. And that material change is what we get to experience and live with. So when people have their needs addressed and met, people will give you the time. You can start building collaborative efforts. You can start building mutual aid, building your community. Because building community starts with building those relationships. And those relationships require an investment. An investment usually is one-sided for the majority, or like for the beginning part, because those people need to have a sense of trust in you. That trust building starts with that investment. And I will gladly reach my hand all the way across to where you're at to give you whatever you need so that you can feel comfortable, feel better, get the help that you need and such, so that we can start building. Because I'll be honest, can't do nothing with people who can't do anything. And this is not to tell people that people can't do anything, but if people don't have the energy, the means, and the capabilities and access to do stuff, you're not getting anything out of the individual, right? If the individual is depressed, if the individual is like not feeling good, or maybe they're literally the inaccessible ways to do stuff, address those needs, comfort, and give attention and time to people who need it. That's pretty much it. Wow. I wanted to say, wow. I know I was kind of looking at the time, not really, but wow, I'm way over. So, I don't mean to cut it short right there, but that was pretty much all I had. Addressing needs, the Vanguard, revolutionary thought versus reactionary. If you guys have any questions, please type, come off mute, take a little drink of water. Didn't realize it was way over 5. So yeah, do all that, drink. And if not, we'll just end in a couple minutes. I'll still be here. I'll share some goodies that I have now that the session's over.
Dope class. Dope discussion.
That's what we do around here. Now I'm going to share. Some stuff. If you're here in the beginning, you already saw these. But I think I finalized the design on the patches that I want to make for us. It's a double ring. This ring on the inside to cover the stitches, the bounce stitches in between these blocks, and then the outside rim to cover the bounce stitches or the jump stitches on the outside blocks. So there's a lot less lines in between, because if you look at this one, I couldn't get every single line in between each one. Well, you can't really see, it's kind of blurry. But there's a difference between these two. This one's slightly bigger and bordered. Pretty cool. So I can make 4 of these I think the machine does it every 45 minutes. So, but I can make a whole bunch of these. Maybe put on our shop. Oh my God. Maybe I'll just have them pass them around. I don't know. People like their patches and stuff. The decentralized patches as well. Pretty cool. I like these. These are like, I can make 5 of these in an hour. That's what the machine says. So yeah, these are pretty cool. They're going to be raw on the back. Jump stitches and stuff. Yeah, cool little patches. Patches are cool, right? Let's see. Headbands too. I make this. The same design. That's actually the same design, 1-to-1. Isn't that pretty cool? Because that's the same software I use. So whether it be a patch or embroidered on, comes from the same machine. So cool. We can do patches, headbands, zines. It's a lot of different ways. And I will say it again. I'm not a big advertiser. I can make stuff, but the fact that I have to go tell people that I made it, big fault. Something I'm working on, but definitely not in my rhythm. Like when I make something, I'm like, cool, I made it. Now what? right? Every now and then a TikTok will blow up and whatnot, and that's pretty cool. But I'm not consistent about it. I have like different blocks of followers, so it's like I gained 2,000 followers a while ago, 2,000, 1,500 some while ago, but they're all different content. So it's like the follower base isn't like one, like I got it under one, like, I follow you for this reason. People follow me for a bunch of reasons. I'm a melting pot. There's no single core following that I have. It's pretty much anyone and everyone. But yeah, I organized with the PRP. That's their logo. It's pretty cool. It's a star but elongated on the bottom. That's a headband. I wear that. I just make a whole bunch of stuff, and it's just about doing stuff. And if you want, this took a while to make, but I like how it came out. This is the badge size of our official. I won't say official, but this is our badge size of the logo. This takes a while to make. Well, the machine takes a while to make, but this takes a long time on the machine. That's pretty cool, huh? Badge size. It's a good size too. These badges. So I call them badge size because it's not like a wallet size or any big size. This is also a badge size for the PRP. PRP member made that just a recognition. And then when we're out and about when I'm organizing with PRP, I'm like, hi, with the PRP. Oh my god, that's so exciting. It's like, hi, I'm PRP. Or it's like, hi, I'm GSUS. Oh my god. It's so funny. It's so cool. And you can do it with small ones too, where it's like, hi, I'm with GSUS. Have this. Super cool, super organizing, getting on the boots ground with the people and be like, oh my god, what is that? I've never heard of that. And you'll get that all the time if you do go out on the street and you do represent, and you can represent. Don't think you need anything special. You don't need to be vetted or anything to say that you're organizing with GSUS. Even if you're here not doing anything and in the meeting you're still here meeting, I will consider you a part of the GSUS because you're here. So you can, if you would take any media and stuff, like, hi, I'm with GSUS. I organize this, and we're doing this because it's community building. You're just getting people aware of the material conditions. Like Rosa Luxemburg, if the revolutionary thing you do is just exclaim what's going on right now. But yeah, patches and stuff like that. Just represent yourself. And if you don't feel comfortable like representing yourself, like I'm X, Y, Z, I'm an organizer with GSUS. Use the name. Use the banner. That's what it's there for. If you don't feel comfortable giving out your real name, say I'm organized with GSUS. Simple. Use the name, use the banner. It's there for everyone, right? I do this for that. If you don't feel comfortable giving out your name, at least build a rapport. At least you're known for something now. Like, oh, that person, they organize the GSUS. I don't know their name, but that's who they are. They can easily identify you. It's something that you start building trust and rapport with the people by becoming a figure in the community. And that's it. I mean, but yeah, patches, cool, badge sizes. This takes a long time to make. I want to make them for our chapters. No. I want something a little more secure, like something made out of metal, like fabricate that stuff. But yeah, cool badge size, logo. Really like that one. Badge patches, headbands. And that's it. That's all I do right now. Zines and stuff. Super cool. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, I'm gonna cut it right now. Appalled that no one said, hey, it's past 5. But yeah, if that's it, if you need to go please. But that's pretty much it out of me. I'm gonna head out now. So thanks so much for stopping by, tuning in, understanding, listening to me yap, going over on time and not telling me. Thanks, guys. We'll be here next week. We'll do all that stuff. We'll be 4 p.m. same time. So if you have any questions, let me know. Type it in chat. DM me if you have anything. I see people typing. Stay a little longer. But if you need to go get out of here. I'll just start flashing my outro sequence. But yeah, I'll stay until, was it? Cool. 5:25 for me. I'll stay until 25 minutes after. 1 more minute. And then hard quit. I never know when to say, I never know when to stop. We'll just call it right there. As soon as I see 25, it's over. Like right now. Oh, hello.
Thanks, Jaden.
Cool. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate all of you.
Later.